다 사람기운에 신신난계기 파소기 누기데
I'd first of all like to offer my greetings to the
안다는
uh, vast gathering of the Sangha, the nuns, and all our Dharma friends, male and female, who are listening over the internet.
섬주시아이
My greetings and wishes that you are well.
다드네 인제 거스 바바데 라망업집에 지시 시하다 디 거스 바바이므레
Today we are having the continuing the teaching for the spring teachings on the 50 verses, and the outline we have primarily been discussing according to Tsongkhapa's commentary.
다 sabje
So these are the eight sentences, such as we're talking about how to pay respect to the Guru, and among these we've gone through the first, who are making offerings,
다다 거스 바바디
and so now tonight
상계 수다와 사야될
we've come to the second, which is viewing the Guru as a Buddha. So viewing them as a Buddha has two subtopics, the actual meaning and avoiding being disrespectful to their shadow, and so forth. And so today I will speak about both of these, about the actual point and avoiding being respectful to their shadow, and so forth. I will speak about both of these points. Now, in the Mahayana ornament of the sutras, the protector Maitreya said, serve the spiritual friend with respect, gift, service, and practice. And so this, if we correlate it to the 50 verses on the Guru, we would say that yesterday we were speaking about the offering the Gurus with gifts. This is during the passage on making offerings, and now we're in the passage of serving the spiritual friend through respect. Now, the actual root verse in the 50 verses itself, on viewing the Guru as a Buddha, the root text goes like this. So here it is. The students with qualities of compassion, generosity, discipline, and patience should not ever consider the master to be different from Vajradhara. So this is the 22nd. And so there are a couple different ways the shlokas can be counted, but this is the 22nd stanza. And this is the Sanskrit, the Tibetan translation, the Chinese, and the English translation. So the Sanskrit is the original. The Tibetan is the one in the tenure. Chinese is the one translated during the Sung Dynasty, and the Indian translation is the one was been translated by our translator Khenpo David Karma Chipal. And so that is that. Now, among these, at the beginning, I'd like to. And so, as the students with qualities of compassion and generosity, so this stanza, the first two lines talk about the characteristics of these students. There are three different students, or three different qualities, or three different passions. So through the students, who naturally have great compassion out of this, and they have the altruism and the wish to help them. They have little attention to wealth and things, and so therefore they're very generous. In brief, they're able to make offerings to the gurus, or they're able to give to the poor and deprived. In this way, they are very generous. And so they're able to make great gifts and be very generous. They also have the vows of patimoksha, of giving up the benefiting others, and along with the basis for that, the bodhisattva of benefiting others, along with the basis for that, and then also the root and saggade samudis. So in brief, it should be an individual with the wish to reach Buddhahood in this life, and in particular, to reach Buddhahood in this lifetime. So, an individual or a student who has these characters and qualities need to have these qualities. They have to have compassion. They have to be very generous. They have to keep their discipline. This is what they need to be. So this, if the student has these qualities, then when they follow the guru, then there's a great hope that it will be actually in accord with the Dharma. Now, the main thing that is necessary for it to be in accord with the Dharma is that they must always think of the guru and the master as being, never think of their master and guru as being different and from the guru. It's like thinking the guru himself is the Buddha. The Buddha themselves is the deity. This is very important. Now, what it says about this in Tsongkhapa's commentary is that the guru as a field for gathering merit, if you think of it as like a field, the field for gathering merit, the guru is the same as all the Buddhas. He's like all the Buddhas. And so for that reason, therefore, for this reason, true students do not consider the Vajra master to be separate from the Vajra bearer Vajradhara. They don't see them that way. And they have the resolve that the Guru themselves is indeed Vajradhara. So true students, or the great students, have the compassionate mind, which is the basis of the Mahayana. They have the generosity of discarding all self-interested attachment to their bodies, possessions, and virtues. And they dedicate those to such beings, and they have the discipline of keeping the vows they've taken purely, so they have discipline. Likewise, they also have the patience of not being discouraged by sentient beings' wrong practice and austerities. This is what Tsongkhapa says, right? Following this, Lord Tsongkhapa talks about how viewing the Guru as a Buddha is not just something that an ordinary, regular person has said, but that is something that is taught in many different wonderful trances. And so Tsongkhapa cites several different. He teaches the 17th chapter of Gurya Samaja, the 15th chapter of the Vajradom, the 14th chapter of the Omrand of Vajradhidaya, the 32nd chapter of the Vajrakandra, and likewise he also cites the four seats. Now, if we needed to recite all of these quotations, we wouldn't have all that enough time. So I'll go through a couple of them, I think. I think that'll be enough. So in general, at the time of Lord Tsongkhapa, most of the citations that he gave are primarily from the Unexcelled Tantra only. But there are also there's another that's not included in that is the Tantra, the Apparament of Vajrapani. And so in the lower classes of Tantras, it's in the Charya Tantra. And so this is quoted in the Manifest Awakening of Vajrapana, and also the Tantra, the Empowerment of Vajrapana. So these two of the two main tantras are considered the main tantras of the Charya Tantra class of tantras. So there's this quotation from the Manifest Awakening, from the Tantra of the Empowerment of Vajrapani, and it goes like this. It says, Lord of Secrets, how should a student view the Master? Just as they view the Bhagavan Buddha. When the student should view the Vajra Master as being an actual Buddha, it says this very clearly. This is a great tantra. The empowerment of Vajra is not included in the unexcelled tantras. It's included in the lower tantras, lower class of tantras. And most Tibetans say that this is included in the Charya Tantra. So it's an important tantra in the Charya Tantras. So this is taught not only in the Anexel Tantras, this is also taught in the lower Tantras. This is just an example of how that is taught in the lower classes of Tantras that you should view the Guru as a Buddha. Following that are some examples of the citations given by Tsongkhapa. Tsongkhapa gives several, so to just give a couple examples. So one is from the 17th chapter of the glorious Guhya Samaja Tantra. And what this is this is so the Maitreya prostrated to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Maitreya prostrated to all the Bodhisattvas and asked this, Bhagavan, how should all the Tathagatas and the Bodhisattvas view a master has been powered by the secret of Vajra, the body, speech, and mind of the Tathagatas Goswami? It says, child of the noble family, all the Tathagatas and Bodhisattvas view them as Bodhicitta Vajra. Why? The master is the same as Bodhicitta, they cannot be separated the two. In any case, this says that when you view a master who's given the abundance, you should see them, all the Tathagatas and Bodhisattvas, how do they see them? It's asking, how should they recognize them? So Maitreya is asking all of the Buddhas what they should say. And the response is what all the Bodhisattvas say. What they said is, child of noble family, all the Tathagatas and Bodhisattvas view them as the Bodhicitta Vajra. Why is that? The master is the same as Bodhicitta Vajra. They cannot be separated into two. So this is what it says, right? Now at this point, when we talk about Vajradhara, Bodhicitta Vajra means it's another name for Vajradhara. It's just another name for Vajradhara, another way he can be called. When it says cannot be separated into two, means according to the Indian master Tsilupa's commentary on the Guhya Samaja, what it says is the Bodhicitta means that from Bodhicitta Vajrasamakaya there arises a Sambhogakaya because its emanated forms are not in our field of vision, it abides in our body. And so it's inseparable from them. So that nature of the Buddha, those who are unable to see the three kayas of the Buddha as they are, so the Buddha then enters the Vajramaster's body in order to purify others' karmic obscurations and so forth. In any case, there are those people who are unable to see us. Like for us, when we are ordinary individuals, we cannot actually see a Buddha. But at this time, the Buddhas all enter the Vajramaster's bond and then bring benefit to sentient beings. And so this is what it says in Acharya Tsilupa's commentary. Now, the reason for viewing them as being inseparable from the Guru is so that you can have equal faith in Vajradhara and in the Guru. Just as much, you should have as much faith in the Guru as you do in Vajradhara. You should also stabilize the faith in their Guru being Vajra, and to gather the accumulations with few difficulties, and just swiftly reach accomplish. So this is the purpose, as is said in Shantipa's commentary on the Guhya Samaja. So this is what Lord Tsongkhapa says. And not only that, there is there's a passage in the 15th chapter of the Vajradhoma Tantra, the Vajrapanjara Tantra. And what it says is this. Now, the words in the actual 15th chapter are a little bit different than the one in the Tanjira. So the citation in Tsongkhapa's commentary and the one in the in the Kanjura. So the one that's So the one who's called Vajra, you should hold the one in this conjuror says, the one who's called Vajra takes the form of the master, aiming to benefit sentient beings, he remains in an ordinary form. Now, so the one in the conjuror and tanjurs are basically the same. The brief thing is that the Vajradhara himself takes the form in order to benefit sentient beings. He emanates as an order and it takes the form of a guru in order to benefit sentient beings. So that is the basic meaning of them. So next, I'd like to just share a few of my own thoughts. So just merely being a Guru master does not necessarily mean that someone is a Buddha. For example, in the Treasury of Knowledge, when it talks about the different kinds of masters, so the types are in general the ordinary beings, a bodhisattva, Siramanaka, and Sambhogakaya, according to one's own four phases. So when you are a beginner, you primarily follow a guru as an ordained individual. When your obscurations are somewhat purified, the guru is a bodhisattva on the levels. When your karmakas are mostly exhausted, you can follow a guru who is a bodhisattva on the high level. And we are on the path of seeing. The spiritual friend is that you can follow as an actual Nirmanakaya Buddha. And when you're on the high levels, you can follow the spiritual guru who is an actual Sambhogakaya. So in this way, these are four different types of Vajra master. But this is not necessarily definitely so. Because even when your karma has not been purified, it's possible that you may be cared for by an emanation of a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. It's not necessarily the case that if you are an individual that your spiritual friend will be an ordinary individual. And so when you talk about the division of the four types of spiritual friends, then this is just a general or gross overview. So now when you think about the four types of Mahayana spiritual friends, there are these four types, and it's also similar in the Sanskrit mantra that you can divide the gurus, classify the gurus, ordinary individuals and noble individuals who have reached the levels. And the reason why you can say this, it is not the case that a guru of a secret mantra absolutely must be a Buddha. It is not so that an ordinary individual may not be the given empowerments or be a guru. This is not what the tantras say. Likewise, in the secret mantra, it talks about many characteristics of the guru, but it does not say that they must have achieved the levels of the bodhisattva levels or that they must be a Buddha. So therefore, it's possible that the guru may be an ordinary individual. However, whether the guru, in their own perspective, is a Buddha or not, from the perspective of the student, they must have unlimited faith in them and great pure view of them. This is very important. So if we think about it from the perspective of the student, having the reason, because you have to have unlimited faith and great pure view of the guru, it's important to have faith in them as if they're an actual Buddha. And so there are a few main points here. One point is that so when we look out and we see the way we see the gurus, we see them as being like ordinary beings, but in actuality, they may be emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. There are many such like that. For example, like Lhotak Marpa the translator, who was known to be an emanation of the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra or of Dhammaherika. This is said, right? And similarly, when we look at them, they seem like really ordinary beings, but in actuality, they may be emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This is quite possible. For example, when we go into a monastery, for example, if we go into a monastery, if we think like we use Rumtek as an example, we cannot categorically say that there are no emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in Rumtek Monastery. We can't say that. when we study the types of signs, we remember the reasons that are the non-observation of the imperceptible. We have to think about something like this. I mean, this is something we have to consider. If we can't point at someone and say that there is an emanation of the Buddha or the Bodhisattva, the Rimtaka, we cannot categorically say that there are none. Similarly, when we read the biographies of many Indian siddhas, there are many who had achieved the supreme city, but in order to benefit sentient beings, in order to benefit various different species, they even took the lowest of low forms. There are many such stories. For example, like Saraha was like the servant to a prostitute. He was a prostitute servant. And so he brought people in and out to see the prostitute. He did this, right? Likewise, Telapa appeared to be a fisherman, and he would he'd catch live fish. There's a story of this, right? And so for this reason, so merely appearing in an ordinary form does not necessarily mean that they're not a Buddha. And so we need to be very careful of this, right? This is an important point. Now, another important point is that as many gurus and scholars of the past have said, so many scholars. So, for example, like we have like the author of the Vinaya Sutras, Acharya Gunaprabha. Now, while he was writing the Vajrasattva, there was a Buddha who entered his chest. It's like he'd been possessed by a deity. It's like he'd been possessed by a Buddha. He received the blessings of Buddha. However, later when he wrote these auto commentary on that, he didn't receive the blessings of the Buddha, and for that reason, the auto commentary itself didn't actually live up to the intent or the meaning of the Vinaya Sutras. So therefore, it's okay to say that the Vinaya Sutras are the words of the Buddha, according to some people. It is sometimes said. So for this reason, even if the Guru is not an actual Buddha, they're the ones who give us the empowerments. They teach us the Dharma, they show us the path, and they bring us, guide us out of samsara. And so in terms of their activity, they're like a Buddha. Likewise, for us to receive the activity of all the Buddhas, we can't receive it directly. It's not like a sun that can directly light a fire. It can't light a fire directly. Only if you shine it through a magnifying glass can it light a fire, like as I said the other day, right? So if you're going to receive the activity of Buddha, it has to be through the Guru. So it needs. So even if the Buddha, it's just like like Buddha has possessed them. It's like they've received the blessings of the Buddhas, and so from our perspective, they're like a Buddha. The reason for that is because we have lesser fortune. And so we cannot take and empower us from the Buddha themselves directly or receive instructions directly from that. We don't have the fortune, we don't have the capability to receive that. Perhaps if a Buddha would even come in front of us, but we wouldn't be able to receive the empowerment. No matter even if a Buddha came carrying a vase or something, we wouldn't be able to take it because we don't have that contact with them. We aren't able to make that connection with the Buddha. We haven't got that ability yet. Even if a Buddha comes in front of us, we can't see them, we can't hear their words. And so for that reason, we don't have that ability. And so for that reason, for people such as ourselves, even if the Buddha can actually come, if they came, we can't see them. But we can't see any Buddha that's greater than the Guru. There's no one better than or other than the Guru. There's no other way. And so the person who shows us the Buddha's whether they're a good person or a bad person, for us, a Buddha would have to be just like them. There's no one we could find better. We can't find someone else. There's no way we can't find anyone different other than them. And so when we thinking in this way, when Mikkyö Dorje wrote in his complete teachings on Mahamudra, So then, what is the basis for considered the root guru? What is the reason we call them the root guru? How do we understand the guru? So first we have to understand the first or the great guru. The first guru, the most supreme, the, the first place lama, the one who is the first among the lamas, the greatest of the gurus. So there's no one above them. That's what we understand. We understand our guru to be like that. And the way we say this is that this is the first plants within your being, the stable basis for the roots of virtue. That means like faith, right? So the first when we feel faith, and who plants the stable basis for the roots of virtue in us, who is that? It is our guru. And so, if we think about it from our perspective as ordinary individuals, the guru is among all the gurus and jewels throughout space. Our guru is actually has the greatest and highest love and wisdom, love, and power. They're the jewels throughout the space, but they can't directly benefit us. The one who can benefit us is the one who has the perfect wisdom, love, and power is the guru. From beginningless samsara until now, there have been many Buddhas and jewels who've come, but we haven't even been able to make a virtuous connection with them. But because of this exalted guru, we are able to make a virtuous connection. And so for that reason, compared to all the Buddhas who fill space, this guru is to be far superior to them. So the guru themselves, if they're an ordinary individuals, in terms of the qualities, you can't compare them to the Buddha. But for us, their capacity and their kindness is far greater. So this is why we say equal to all the Buddhas in qualities, far superior to Buddhas in the kindness. And no other Buddha at all has been able to bring us onto the path to liberation. And we have wandered in the path in the sutra. So now we have been able to reach the beginning of the path. And this is because of our Guru Vajra master and our root guru's kindness. And so they're extremely kind to us. So what the Kadampa masters of the past had said, ordinary gurus are like people who give us food when we're hungry. So the noble gurus, that means they're like that. The gurus who are dwell on the bodhisattva levels are people who are like giving us food. Once we're already quite full, they're the only ones who finally start giving us food. So that's what the gurus on the noble levels are like. And so the person who feeds you when your stomach is hungry, is empty, is the one who's better. And someone who gives you food when you're full is fine, it's good, but it's not that kind. You don't really need it. So for that reason, the ordinary gurus, who are ordinary individuals, when our stomachs are empty and we're like about to die from hunger, the ones who give us food. And so they give us clothes when we're about to die from cold. And the gurus who dwell on the noble levels, by the time we get to the point where we can see them, we've also become pretty good ourselves. We're doing all right ourselves. We've got a pretty high level ourselves. And so for that reason, the noble gurus are, of course, pretty good, but they're not quite as kind as the ordinary individuals who are gurus, as the Kadampa gurus say. Likewise, in the worldly tradition of upstanding people, it said that the people who are people to us are our parents and teachers and so forth, and beneficent are like they're the jewels. Likewise, the guru is able to bring us onto the path to Buddhahood in one lifetime, in one body, even if they're not actually a Buddha themselves. It's like there's no way we can find a Buddha. If we went looking for another Buddha than them, we wouldn't find them. And so for this reason, Oh, we need to view the guru as a Buddha themselves. And so with this point in mind, that Victoria's Buddha said in his text on the indivisible winds in mind, or winds in mind, prana indivisible states, it says, even though the guru is an ordinary person, when performing activities such as benefit uh, empowering students, all the Buddhas actually come. From one perspective, we think of visualize the guru as the Buddha, as the hidden deity. In we visualize it, but in any case, all of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the Yidam deities, and all the blessings of the three Vajras of the body, speech, and mind enter the guru. And so when the student takes the empowerment, they naturally receive the blessings of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. And so for that reason, the guru at that time becomes an actual guru. And the reason is that it is because we receive the activity of the guru coming through the guru that we are able to receive any benefit them. Without a guru, we cannot receive the power of the Buddha's activity. So because we haven't really come to that capability or to that level yet. So from our own perspective, the guru is more kind than the Buddhas. So now after this, there are many different citations that Bhikkhu Dorje gives from the Tantras and the Indian texts. And so a qualified guru such as that, when you see them as being an actual Buddha or being equal to the Buddha or even being seeing them, if we can view them in this way, this is excellent. There's nothing wrong with it. And the reason for this is that, as Bhikkhu Dorje says in his 100 short instructions, as you develop devotion, as you develop the ambition to use supplicants, and then by that you receive the blessings to be able to receive the supreme and ordinary siddhis according to the level of your devotion and supplications. So how do we say? So in general, it's only supplicating that's important. It's not enough to think that my guru is like this, but there must be some Buddha that's superior than that. There must be some Buddha that's superior than my Buddha Mata. If you think that, if you don't think of the guru as being the greatest, then and to them, they're not going to receive that many blessings. But if you think that there is no Buddha who is superior to the Buddha, if you have that confidence, you have that certainty, you have to have that confidence within your mind, and then you can supplicate them with every fiber of your being, and with this enthusiasm of body, speech, and mind, unlike any other enthusiasm, then you will be able to receive the blessings of the Guru. So in brief, even if the Guru is themselves an ordinary being, whether they're an ordinary being or a Buddha or a Nirmanakaya or not Nirmanakaya, the most important thing is that the Guru have all the qualifications and that you yourself have faith, the faith that you are someone who's able to develop, the faith that is the cause of this, and you have the devotion. And if you then are able to receive the kindness of the empowerments, instructions, and transmissions, then if you have think of them as being, do this, then you'll be able to receive the blessings. So in this way, you'll be able to receive all the blessings of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. Now, the reason is, as Bhikkhu Dorje says, also from the 100 Short Instructions, what he says is that some people think when we say that the Guru isn't a Buddha, but we imagine to be Buddha, they're not. They would think that we just imagine to be like, we're just sort of silly. But the Guru thinks it's like this is not freed from the birth, age, and sickness. They suffer from heat and cold, hunger and thirst. And if things don't happen the way they like, then they can cry out in pain, they can complain, and they can worry, right? And it's just a human who does all that. And so if they have someone like that, an ordinary individual like that, this can they possibly be Vajradhara? It's possible that we might think this. A Vajradhara is someone who has no feelings of pleasure or pain, someone who has no experience of hunger, cold, thirst, and so forth. We think like that's what we think. Think they're the Vajradhara. They don't need to experience hunger and thirst. They don't need to have birth, age, sickness, and death. They aren't going to complain when things don't work as is. So we think there's no way that they can be. That's what Vajradhara has to be like. But but as we said before, what the Book of Ani says, indeed, that in the final 500-year period, I myself will appear in the form of a teacher, think this is me, and at that time generate respect for me. So if we look at it, it may seem like an ordinary individual, but if they receive the blessings of the Vajra's body, speech, and mind, and then the disciples can receive from them the blessings of Vajradhara and receive and achieve and be bestowed the accomplishments. And so for this reason, there is no greater root of virtue than pleasing the Guru. So that's how it is, right? So in brief, there are many similar things that are said, but I don't need to say all of it. But in any case, to say the best is before you follow the Guru, you need to look whether the Guru has all the characteristics or not. And even if you can't, you need to examine. You can't just follow any old Guru. Once you have followed the Guru, even if you see a few faults, you should not lose faith or complain about them or criticize them. As the Kadampa masters of this said, if you first follow the Guru, but you don't examine them first, then you follow the Guru, it's kind of like getting married. These days, even getting married is not so. In the past, when you got married, then you have to, it's like you are forced to stay in your life. Nowadays, like you get married one year, you get out, break up, and you go with someone else next year. No, it's not like that. Uh, so like, so it's not like that. It's not like when go to a guru and then you're with them for a little while, think, oh, there's a better one, and then you find another. That's not good. Because because if you disappoint one guru, it's like disappointing all gurus. Even if a guru is even if a guru is not a good, then you have to view them live them being as respect them as an actual Buddha. Even if it's a bad guru, you should still not disrespect them, because if you disrespect them, then no matter how much respect you show a good guru later, you will not be able to receive it. Because if you have a breach of Anaya, then later, or breach of Samaya, then later, no matter what instructions or you will not receive the blessings or develop experience and realization. So for that reason, we must be very careful. And so the main thing here is the question of the blessings are extremely important. In particular, in Secret Mantra Vajra is primarily taking blessings of the path, as Gampopa said in his Dharma talks. In the Sutra path, Gampopa said that it is taking blessings as the path. Some say that it's taking perception as but Gampopa said that taking the tantras is taking blessings as the path, taking Mahamudra is taking the perception as the path. So in the secret mantra, blessings are extremely important. And the origin of the blessings is the Guru, the place where you receive the blessings from. Not looking at it, it's like if you have a blessing, the place where the faucet from which the blessings come is the Guru. And so the place where we receive the blessings from the Guru, and so what we feel faith and devotion for must be the Guru. And so for that reason, the place where it comes from, the place where we go up, that all comes up to the Guru. If there's no Guru, it's possible you could receive some blessings without the Guru. But if you have, if you're violated your samaya, if you have upset the guru, if you have disrespected the guru, then it's basically impossible for you to receive the blessings, or extremely difficult to receive any of the blessings. And so for this reason, as I said before, no matter how many blessings you receive from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so forth, you can receive from Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. You have to receive them through the guru. And so first of all, you have to have true faith, pure faith in that guru. If you don't have faith, then you can't receive any blessings, because the gateway for receiving blessings is the faith. It's like, I think there was a Kadampa master in the past. He said to a student, the student said, "Please give me blessings." And the master said, and the guru said, "Well, first of all, you give me faith." And it said, "If I need to bless you, then first of all, you have to have faith in me. If you don't have faith in me, then I can't bless you," he said. So similarly, the greater your virtue, then the greater the blessings that you will receive. As I said, that Gampopa said, it's well known in the Sangha, so that the highest devotion has the devotee's pleasure. If you have excellent virtue, you said the greatest blessings, and then you have the greatest blessings. If you have middling devotion, then your meditation will also be middling, and your blessings will also be meditation. If you have the least devotion, you have like medicine, they just can get low rate blessings and only have low rate, low class, low rated meditation. So I thought I'd give like an example of faith for a guru. So it's a story or a great. There's a student of the Karmapa Dusum Khenpa. And so this is one whom Sungjanyan Chempa. So now in the Feast for Scholars describes this story about him. So the Stringon Sonam Gyatso. So he was a student, he was going through Khams to gather offerings. So he had to go through Khams to gather offerings. And at that point in Karmapa, there were a lot of followers of the Karmapa, followers of the Karma Kamsang. And when he had to teach to them, he understood that he had to have a Kamsang lineage. And so we went to see Tsupro Jamyang Chenmo. So he probably went to Tsupro, I think. He went to Tsupro. And we got to Tsupro, then when Chingan Lotsawa, the translator, came, at that time, there was a question of the side. And came to welcome him. And when they prostrated, so they prostrated to each other, right? So when they prostrated together and they prostrated to each other, and the seats were then exactly the same level. And they gave him good meals and so forth. However, but Sungjanyan didn't teach him any Dharma at all. He didn't teach Dharma itself. Of course, every day they would have conversations discussions about the Dharma. And so the Tsupro Jamyang Chenmo was like extremely learned, right? It was like he was such a vast knowledge that such a great that Trimga Lotsawa, who was also very learned, he also thought of himself as being really learned. But he lost all of his pride and think that he was very learned. And then he realized that he spent a month realizing. He spent a month there, and after a month there, then Trimgad Lotsawa He thought about it to himself. He is treating me like this. He's like, he's really treating me very, he's giving me a lot of respect, but he's not teaching me any Dharma, and I'm wondering why that is. I said, wonder, why is he not teaching me the Dharma? Later, what he thought is, it's because the Dharma is, we need to listen to the Dharma properly, according to the Dharma. I'm too proud. My view is too high. I've been thinking of the Dharma as like a thing. I'm thinking of asking for the Dharma as like asking for a thing. Thinking about asking for wealth, not thinking of the Dharma as being Dharma. So my faith is, he had not been able to develop faith in, that really accorded with the Dharma, and realizing that this was not proper. He realized that he hadn't developed the perception of the spiritual friend as a Buddha, but instead thought of him as like a friend or as like a companion, like an ordinary being. And so for this reason, he realized that he was not a proper vessel for the Dharma. And so this is why he must not have taught me. And so immediately he got very sad and he shed many tears. And so this is feeling that he had. When he had this feeling, then he saw that Supo Jamyang Chenpo was actually the same as the Buddha. And so he thought that he supplicated intensely. And the next morning, very early, a little differently than very early, someone came to invite him. And when he was brought, then Chimkang Lotso went. And on that day, it was different than the other days. Supo Jamyang Chenpo was seated on his throne. When Chimkang Lotso did, he just stayed. He didn't stand up and prostrate. He didn't do any of that. He didn't do any of that. And when he gave the blessings with his hands. So before, in the past, they had touched foreheads. He didn't do that. He gave it with his hand. And in front of his, there was a small carpet. And he said, "You please sit here." When he said, "Sit there," he said, "It says that someone act when wanting the Dharma. Someone who seeks the Dharma should act like this." And immediately, then he began teaching the profound inner meaning from the beginning, teaching it through the 6 limits and the 4 modes. And so he taught the profound inner meaning according to the Tantra tradition. And he also, and Chimkang Lotso made notes about this, what we can still see. In this commentary is different than other commentaries. It's superior, it's often said. In any case, he took this commentary and he received it as like instructions, and so for that reason, Chimkang Lotso himself had a really extraordinary faith in Jamyang Chenpo. And so this is the reason why faith is so important. So now the greater our faith and the better it is. And there's another story about that. And what the story is that there's a Patu Doji Gyalpo. Patu Doji Gyalpo, and there was also a geshe named Shangtsung Topa. So first of all, he was a Dharma friend of Shangtsungpa, but he later became a senior student of Patu Drupa. And so he became a senior student. He was like the first student, and so this was a Patu Doji Gyalpo student, Geshe Shangtsung Topa. Now Gampopa was very well known, right? Because Gampopa was so well known, Pama Drupa went to Dalai Gompa and wanted to meet Gampopa very badly. But at that time, then, knew that he's Gozen. And so he says, if you're going to go to Gampo Lama, I will go. I also want to go see Gampopa and prostrate him. So for that reason, the two of them went. At that time, they were friends, and they went to Dalai Gompa together. Geshe Shangtsungpa, he was very wealthy, actually. And very wealthy means that when they went to Dalai Gompa, he had many offerings and things he brought many things to offer to Gampopa. And when they got to Dalha Gampo, Gampo at that time was a little bit not feeling so well. He was having a bit of a health problem. So they spent 40 days before they met him. But during that time, what the students did were doing various services. They were building a stupa as a long life offering for Gampo. And so Padma carried the earth for this, for building the stupa and stuff. He spent some time helping out with this. And when Gampopa recovered his health, then immediately they were called to see Gampopa. So Padma and this Geshe Shangsun Topa went together to see him. But Padma thought, as I said, he thought, he's not going to give me any dharma because I don't have anything to give him. I don't have any offering, so he's not going to give me any dharma. And so he had this sort of like, thought this was a mistake. And so he asked Geshe, he said, Geshe Shangsun Topa, I have nothing to offer. So I have nothing to offer. If he doesn't give it to you because I don't have it, so we should go separately to receive the Dharma teachings. And so he said this to Geshe Shangsun. We go separately because you have offerings that I don't. Now, Geshe Shangsun didn't say that. He didn't say anything. But he went to see Gopapa and they saw Gopapa. And Geshe Shangsun Topa was very wealthy. So he had a huge uterus. It's probably like huge, like this huge turquoise. Some people say it's the size of size of a pigeon or something. In any case, it was really huge turquoise, and he offered them this huge turquoise, and then after that, and so he had everything else given, saying this is Padma Yapo's offerings. But he said that this is in place of Padma making this offering. He offered a lot of silks and so forth, and like I said, brocades and so forth. They had some conversation. They had conversations over tea. And so what Gampopa Padma had thought that Padma was worried about not receiving Dharma teachings. So Gampopa said, you come to him tomorrow to breakfast. And so you two come at breakfast. We will have breakfast tomorrow. And that time we can have Dharma teachings together. I can give the teachings together at the same time. As you said, we can have Dharma teachings at the same time. Now, when they were giving the tea, Gampopa had a cup for the tea. There's some gives a little bit of person. And Padma thought this is wonderful. The stupas are really very kind, very nice. So they're really compassionate for us to give some tea from Gampopa's teapot. Padma on this day, when he was meeting Gampopa, had this like extraordinary joy, like it's like this incredible. And so when they came back, then on the way from seeing Gampopa, then Padma and Geshe Shangsun Topa spoke about this, and said, Padma said, Geshe Shang, what did you see when you saw the Guru Gampopa? What did you think about him? What did you think of the Guru? And so then the Geshe said, I saw this Guru as being really learned, virtuous, and good individual. That's how I saw him. Padma said, oh, when I saw him, I didn't was like that. I think it was like seeing an actual Buddha. That's what I thought. So that very day, the next morning, they're going to see them. Padma thinking, had such strong desire to see the Guru. It's like he couldn't sleep all night thinking, when is the sun going to come? When is dawn going to come? And thinking about wondering when the sun would shine, he didn't sleep well. And extremely early in the morning, because he hadn't slept right, he got up really early. Padma got up early in the morning. He said to Geshe Shangsun, okay, we got to go now. Get up, Geshe. So the Geshe also got up. The other day, the guru said, the precious guru had said, come early, right? So we have to go early, right? He said. Geshe Shangsumpa said, these yogis do have some, some problems. These students are not, they don't understand, they don't know what's good or it. Because on that day, the students gave the tea to them, a little bit of the tea, so he didn't like it. The Gampopas just don't really understand the way things should be done. And he gave us the food that we were supposed to eat. But Padma said, they did this out of a wish to help us. I think it's beneficial for us. They gave us a wish for us to receive the blessings. There's nothing to think about. We should go. So only them did Geshe Shangsung Toba go along. And so the story that there's a story of they're going together to see that it's because of this interdependent connections. Later, Druma had activity that was equal to space. He was among the of all of Gampopa's students. He is one who had the greatest activity. But Geshe Shang, he became a senior student of Padma, but other than that, he did not have particularly vast activity. Now, another example of this is that if you only have only medium activity, when your activity increases, your faith grows stronger and stronger. For example, it's like when you receive this tradition, this happened where you actually see the paths and levels, then you see the Buddha as the Buddha. For example, when Gampopa met Milarepa, he had incredible faith in Milarepa before he met him. Then when he met Milarepa, then he of course had great faith. But at that time, when he was about to part from the Guru, what Milarepa said to him was, in the future, one day you will have developed superior realization. It's unlike what you have now. At that time, you'll also have developed the certainty of seeing me, this old man me, like a natural Buddha. He predicted this, and later when Gampo, who was later practicing Ulka and other places, he realized the nature of his mind, then at that time, he had the faith of seeing his guru as being an actual Buddha. His previous faith was a great faith, but that faith, as he said before, in actuality, the guru is an actual Dharmakaya. In the past, I sort of saw him as an actual sort of great Mahasiddhas. That wasn't okay. But you think he's like the actual Dharmakaya. Because when he received the Dharmakaya, he actually realized that the guru is also the Dharma nature, the Dharmakaya. And so that's one story. Likewise, when we look at the story about Gontsangpa, there's another story. When we talk about, and the story is what the Gontsangpa said is like, one point, his guru was Tsampa-gyare, Drogon Tsampa-gyare. And he once thought he's probably a 10th level bodhisattva. This is what he thought. And immediately he thought that, then immediately he thought to himself, what he immediately thought is, it's that the guru who points out my own mind, who points out the actual nature of the Dharma nature, you think that is a Dharmadvita? Like, I think there's no one else who thinks of that. Like, he criticized himself. And from then on, I said he was never, that he never lacked the idea of the Buddha. So thinking that the guru is a 10th level bodhisattva, for something like Great Godzampa, you think that the guru is a 10th level bodhisattva. If you think of that, this is not authentic devotion. thinking that they're an actual Buddha is actual devotion, is what he's recognized. Now, for us, before then, forget about an actual Buddha, then forget about a 10th level Bodhisattva. The Guru actually is like this. We think the Guru is like, it's even difficult for us to think, have the belief of think the Guru is an authentic Guru. It's like, and so, for us, because the obscurations of our bad karma and our karma are so great, the fact that we can actually see the Guru as a human is better. Seeing the fact that we're not seeing them as being like a dog or a donkey is actually pretty good. Forget about seeing the Guru as an actual Buddha. Seeing the Guru as someone, an authentic Guru with learned, venerable, and good, developing confidence in this is really difficult, right? So we need to, it said we need to view the Guru as being a Buddha, but how do we think about them to see the Guru as an actual Buddha? How can we develop the faith of seeing the faith and pure vision of saying the Guru is an actual Buddha? So I have some ideas about that I'd like to share with you. So in general, there was a time when Trungpa Trungpa asked Atisha a question. And what he says, there are many people in Tibet who practice meditation, but really there aren't that many people who develop superior qualities. Why is that? And what Atisha said about this is, so all the qualities of the Mahayana you develop, whether they're great or small, they all arise because of the Guru. And you Tibetans only think of the Guru as an ordinary person. So for that reason, how can you possibly develop extraordinary qualities? So the Gurus of the past, if you lacked a dedication to the Guru, you will not receive blessings. So you have to have faith and dedication to the Guru. And of course, not only do you have to do dedication to them, you also must think of the Guru as being a Buddha. And the reason for this is that if you think of the Guru as a Buddha, then you will receive a Buddha's Buddha. If you think of the Guru as a Bodhisattva, you receive a Bodhisattva's blessing. If you think of the Guru as being an ordinary person, a regular person, you're not going to receive that many blessings at all. So actually, there are many scriptural and logical proofs to teach us that the Guru is the same as a Buddha, or is an actual Buddha. But if you don't believe it, no matter how many thousands of proofs you're presented, there's not much benefit. So I think, first of all, when you say that the Guru and the Buddha are the same, I think, what is the Buddha that the Guru is like? That's something we need to consider. So in general, each individual, one of us, the best we think, we have the idea, what is the greatest person like that? We think, what is a good behavior? What could like an individual who has exhausted all qualities, possesses all qualities, what could it be? What is the level that person should be? So each person has their own idea of what the level is like, and they're not all going to be the same. Some people, what they want is kind of what their hope is a very low level. Some people have really complicated needs and wants. They have really high level, really difficult. Particularly when we say Buddha, what we all think of as like something like this Buddha's being like some incredible being. You see him as like superhuman. They're like a god. That's what we think, right? When we talk about Buddhas and we think it's a myth, we don't think about it as a human history, but about people. We'd never think about it as like that. So when we say the same as a Buddha, you have to view them as the same as a Buddha. And it seems like the Joel statue in Lhasa has got up and come to us. And so, that's what we think it has to be like. Or we have to think of like a god that comes down from heaven. We think it has to be something like that. That's what we think. But I don't know, the way things appear to us in general and common is that the Buddha was a historical personage who actually lived in India 2,500 years ago. He was a historical person, right? He wasn't a god. When he was born from his mother's womb. So I said, of course, we just say he's born from under his mother's, but in that case, he was in his mother's womb. He spent 9 months in the 8 or 9 months in his mother's womb. That's the same as all of us, isn't it? And when he wanted to learn how to alphabet, when he wanted to, he had to be taught these from the very beginning. He had to eat food. He had to go to the bathroom. And at night, he had to sleep. And he could get sick too. He got old. And he passed away, right? If we don't say that, he died, right? If we don't say it respectfully. He had other feelings of pleasure and pain. He was someone who had feelings of pleasure and pain. And so this is when you look at him, he's just a human, right? But what was different from him from other people is that he'd awakened to Buddhahood. He'd achieved the level of Buddhahood. That is what is different from him, between him and other people. Would you say that he'd awakened to Buddhahood, then that doesn't mean that like he develops 3 heads and develops 6 arms, and that it's like you become Buddha, you can develop extra heads and extra arms. That's not what we mean. Sometimes we talk about the third eye, right? Like in the middle of your forehead. It's not like in the middle of the forehead there's a eye develops right there, you grow a third eye. It's not talking about that. It's not saying that you grow an extra eye when you become a Buddha. Awakening to Buddhahood means that you realize what the nature of all Dharma is. It's when you understand what the path to achieving liberation in omniscience is. It's knowing how to teach that path to other people. It means that you are someone who can teach this path unmistakably to others. So in brief, being a Buddha means that you've come to an extremely high level of experience and realization. And so for that reason, we call them by the name Buddha. It's not like it's like becoming some superhuman and becoming a god. That's not what it means. So when you say he's awakened to Buddha, it's a huge improvement in his in internal qualities. It doesn't mean that his form, his external form as a human is changed at all. So I think if we only look at it on the surface, it'd be difficult for us to distinguish between whether he's a Buddha or not. To give an example now, in the future, the scientists can invent a time machine. They invent a time machine. So we could go back in time. We could make a time machine, we could go back into time, then we go back to the time of the Buddha. So we return to the time of the Buddha. Then when we return, a few of us go back, right? And without anyone else telling us, there's no one telling us if through our own power, if we look for and find the Buddha, we'd have to find them on our own, right? And if we need to do it on our own, if we wanted to go look for the Buddha immediately after he achieved Buddha, question, would we find the Buddha or not? I think that it probably wouldn't find the Buddha. I think it wouldn't be easy to find the Buddha. Even if we did find the Buddha, I think we couldn't recognize him as being a Buddha. And the reason for this is, for one thing, that there's none of us who ever actually met the Buddha. We never actually saw the actual Buddha, right? So when we eat the actual Buddha, we wouldn't be able to determine that that was the Buddha. That's one reason. And another important thing is a more important reason is that the way we think about a Buddha, it's like we don't think that he's like an actually ordinary person. We think that it must be some different, extraordinary being. That's what we think. So when you go to the Bodhi tree and you see an ordinary person as a Buddha, we wouldn't believe it. And so there can't be a Buddha. It's got to be someone who's shining light, who has a halo. He's got to be huge. We'd look all around to see if we could find them. We wouldn't really take any interest in the person who's in front of us as being a Buddha. So when you think in our minds, when you say Buddha, there's incredible, huge gap between the Buddha that we think there should be and the actual Buddha who's sitting there. And in particular at that time, There's so many meditators who spiritual practitioners who are sitting under mats meditating. There are many great practitioners in India at that time. And so if you look from the outside, there'd be a lot who'd look a lot like the Buddha. Like the whole country is filled with them. So another, who's the actual Buddha? We wouldn't know. So I think it would be difficult for us. And so for that reason, first of all, we need to understand that the Buddha Shakyamuni was an individual who appeared in a human form. And if we understand that, then I think we can understand how the guru can be a Buddha. That's one thing. In general, when we're talking about a spiritual friend or a guru, the external appearance of the spiritual friend of the guru, the way we should understand that, we don't mean that external appearance of the other human. That's not what we mean when we say a spiritual friend or guru. That's not what we mean. But what it actually means is someone who teaches us the pure Dharma and elevates our mind to a higher level. Also, the word Buddha doesn't refer to the external form. It has to refer to the inner qualities. In particular, to understand the main way we should understand the jewel of the Buddha is someone who teaches the students the unmistaken path. That's the main activity of the jewel of the Buddha, is that. So for this reason, we call the Shakyamuni Buddha our teacher, because he's the one who teaches us the path. He's the first one who taught the path, so we call him our teacher. And also, if the guru is an authentic guru, they also teach the path without mistake, just like the Buddha. They're able to teach that for us individually. The guru performs the activity of a Buddha, just as a Buddha. They do the activity of a Buddha. And particularly if the guru has a lineage, the Dharma that they teach has been passed from the Buddha Shakyamuni, from one guru to the next. Many of these great beings practiced it and eventually, in the end, all the way down to our own root guru now. And so the Dharma that we receive from the root guru and the Dharma that we receive from the Shakyamuni Buddha would be no different. The Dharma that they teach is the same. It's like there's no difference between them. And so for this reason, we think about it in terms of these reasons. It wouldn't be presumptuous to say that all the teachers who teach the students are the pure Dharma, are like the Buddhas. It's actually not contradictory of reality. In fact, I think it actually matches how things truly are. And so it's instead of taking the very person as an ordinary but modern person as an example of spiritual friend, we need to take the person who teaches us the true Dharma and helps us elevate our Dharma to our mind to a higher level. That's what we should take as being a spiritual friend. Not only that, the teacher Vajradhara himself also said, as I said before, in a future time of generation, I will appear in the form of a master, he said. When he's saying this in the degenerate time, the people who want Dharma will not be able to meet me, the teacher Vajradhara. But they don't need to think that they can't practice the Dharma and they can't receive the Dharma. Because of the reason, because even though I seem to have passed away, in all times I'm performing activity to spread the Dharma. And so if you come in a degenerate time, so no one who so we predicted that at that time, if you want to enter my teachings, at that time I will become your teacher and teach you the Dharma that's appropriate for your devotion. Now, another doubt that we can have is that if we think about the Guru as a Buddha, this is something that's taught in the Vajra, in the secret mantra. It's not like a Buddhism thing. It's not something that's accepted generally in Buddhism. But that's not true either. To give an example of this is that we talk about the preeminent account of Vinaya. When speaking about the activity of associating with the teachers, is those who associate with them should keep the conception of thinking of the Khenpo as the teacher. They should serve him, stand up promptly, walk quickly, be respectful, and serve them. So in the Vinaya, it says that you have to think of the Khenpo as the teacher. Likewise, the Mahayana Sutras, such as the Sutra on the Ten Dharmas, says, they are thus free of depravity of body, speech, and mind, so rouse the conception of the abbot as the teacher. Likewise, the Light of Gold Sutra says, rouse the connection of the teaching Dharma as the great teacher. The Sutra of Narayana's questions also says, and this is also named the Noble Mahayana Sutra called the Samadhi that encompasses all merit. So that's a different name. But what it says is that you should think of the Dharma, the teacher, as medicine, and think of the abbot and master as the teacher. So for this reason, so in general, you should think of it. In general, of course, as we just said, in the sutras it is said, you recognize in the sutras that you should view the gurus as being like the Buddha, and in the Sanskrit it said you should recognize them as the actual Buddha. So that we do make that distinction, but in any case, whether the Buddha is similar to, we need to see them in that way. But for that reason, what we need to do is, it's not just someone who can teach the guru. What is as important to that is having belief, having confidence. If you don't have confidence, even if the Buddha came in person, it would be difficult. Because the Buddha spent like around 80 years, over 80 years, and during that time, many people had faith and confidence in them. Many followed him and achieved liberation. There were a lot of people like that. But also there are people who didn't feel faith in him, who didn't consider him valuable, or even who didn't take much interest in him. There are many people especially there are people like Devadatta. He wasn't just anyone. He was the Buddha's own cousin. He was his own cousin, but he felt jealous of the Buddha. He started to hate him. And in the end, he tried to kill the Buddha several times. There were even people like that. So even with a perfect Buddha, there were people who made good connections with him, people who made bad connections, and there are people who made no connection at all. So there are many different types of these people. It's not like the Buddha is just merely being there. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to feel faith in it. That's not necessarily going to happen. There's not less certain that you're going to achieve liberation. The main point is, from your own perspective, having faith and confidence is as important. So for that reason, having faith and conviction, and the thing, and the guru and the teacher, it's the same in importance. Sometimes having confidence is even more important, shall we say, is even more important than having someone to teach you the path. There are times when it is more important, and there's a story about this. Now, what this story is that in the old days, a long time ago, there were two people who wanted to go to Circumambit Sari. The Sari is a sacred place, right? It's a very important Kagyu place, sacred site. They went to Circumambit Sari, and there's a neighbor in that region. It's an old lady who heard it. And when she heard to these people, she went to them, and the old woman went to them and said, "Is it true that you two are going to Tsari?" they asked. And the people said, "Yeah, it's true, we're going." And the old woman was delighted. She said, "Oh, okay, then my wish will be fulfilled." And she said, "Tsari is a long way, so you'll need some provisions for the trip." So he gave them I gave them a bag of tsampa and a bag of puffed wheat. Joyo comes with a full bag of both. So you two go to Tsari, go to the Dabashiri, and then from the Dabashiri, bring us like a small rock, small stone as a support for me, an old woman, to pray over. And the reason for that is that I've heard that Tsari is the mandala of Chakra. So if I can do this, so I can have the stone from that, I can have that. And said, "Oh, this is easy. Of course we'll do this." And they went off. They went to Tsari. They circumambulated, and then they forgot to bring the rock. They forgot to bring the rock, And they didn't remember even though they'd forgotten. As they're coming back to their homeland, when they got back to the homeland, the old woman was and knew that it was about the time they'd come back, and so the old woman went out to look out to see are they coming. So she was watching to see if they'd come, and she saw her standing watching from a high place, and immediately they remembered that they'd forgotten to bring the rock. What are we going to do? What's the best thing for us to do? So think about what's the best thing to do. There's nothing we can do. We need to bring just like a black rock from there. And so they went to a place where the old lady, they took out the place, they wrapped it in kata, they pretended it was something, they put it inside their cloaks, and they went over to see the old woman. When they got to the old woman, she asked her, how are you doing? Did you have problems? She said. And then I said, you two must have brought my rock, right? I said, oh, of course. Oh, we paid so much attention to this. We intentionally really were careful to do this, they said. And so they took this stone from right in front of the pure crystal mountain, they said, and they gave it to the old woman. So this old woman, there are many of these gullible old women, right? Even these days, right? And so, oh, this black stock must really have come from the sacred state, and it must be the Yidam itself. And so she put it above her pillow. She made like the shelf above it. She put it there. She offered and every day she offered water and lamps. And whatever she ate or drank, she made an offering to them. In the morning and night, she prostituted 100 times each, and he supplicated it. Eventually, that stone itself, from that stone, actually naturally grew an image of Vajravari herself, just spontaneously grew. And so the old woman's faith increased greatly. Of course, your faith is going to grow, right? And so she just supplicated, and then as she did so, the dust started to give off many relics. In the end, when the old woman passed away, there were so many miraculous signs, and it's like she went off to Kechari. So this is a story. Okay, so there. This is how important confidence is, right? And that belief and confidence has to be stainless and sincere and pure. If our faith and conviction is not pure, then it's not good. So a lot of people nowadays who enter the gate of Dharma, they do not find an authentic guru and instead meet fake gurus. There are a lot of these times this happen. And one factor in this is that the student themselves does not have a pure motivation. They don't have a stable intention to practice genuine Dharma. So the Karmapa Dusangkhapa said the student's mirror is the guru, he said. So it's like the guru appears in the way according to your desire and wishes. So if you're someone who is attached to eternal wishes, then it's basically when you look, it's possible to find a guru who, when you look at them from the outside, is handsome and good looking. And that's what you're going to look for, and that's what you're going to find. Some people think what they think is they should find a guru, someone who pays a lot of attention to you, who's like always welcoming to you, who doesn't think about other people, but always will see me more than anyone else. And so I think that maybe that's what the guru is going to be like. And so because that's what they want, they also find that there's the danger that they're only going to find a guru like that. We think of like Milarepa, for example. I mean, he practiced sorcery, killed people. And he killed a lot of people, and he thought, when I die, there's nowhere I'm going to go except for hell. He only had one help, and that is he could teach a guru who could find the instructions on awakening in this Buddhahood. If he could meet them, get the instructions, and achieve Buddhahood, then he could do that. Other than meeting that guru, there's nothing else he could think of that could do. There's only one thing that he needed. There was nothing else that he needed. Perhaps this is like too extreme of an example, but in any case, for us to practice the Dharma, it's important for us to have the motivation of wanting to practice Dharma and the pure truth of motivation of wanting to follow a guru who is a real practitioner. If our motivation is pure and sincere, then our chance of growing, of meeting the guru becomes hundreds of times more, much more likely. If you don't have that, you won't. For example, now, if you like Tilopa, Naropa, and Marpa, and other teachers like that, would we see them as being like a good guru? Most of us probably wouldn't see them as being like a good guru. People who behave so badly. Forget about us seeing them as a guru. We'd probably call the gurus to call the police to have them arrest them, put them on trial, send them to prison, or maybe send them to a lunatic asylum. There's the danger that we'd say that, right? In particular, the Tibet. Forget about if there's no freedom, and is it? But there is the freedom to sue the gurus, and the people will say anything about the gurus. You have a lot of freedom criticizing. So now we're in a time like this. If Tilopa, Naropa, and Marpa were alive today, it would be difficult for us to consider them an authentic guru. And so for this reason, it's important to have a good guru, but for our perspective, it's important to have good certainty and good conviction in them. So I think that is enough for today.